You think the 1990s was the peak of over-engineering? The 2000s was like, hold my beer. Today, we're counting down the decade's most over-engineered cars, crazy, ridiculously complex, and the absolute definition of shut up and take my money. Number 8. Porsche Carrera GT. Did you know the car that killed Fast and Furious star Paul Walker in 2013 wasn't a Lamborghini or Ferrari, but a Porsche Carrera GT? That tragedy cemented its reputation as one of the most dangerous and most over-engineered supercars ever built. Here's the thing. The Porsche Carrera GT was basically a Formula One science experiment that somehow escaped the lab and ended up on the street. The heart of it all was the M8001 V10 engine, considered by many the most over-engineered V10 ever put in a production car. You see, Porsche originally designed it for a Formula One program in the 1990s that never happened. So what do you do when you're sitting on a leftover racing engine? Most companies would shelve it. Porsche said, nah, let's throw it in a road car and terrify millionaires. And terrifying it was. The 5.7-liter naturally aspirated V10 revved to 8,400 RPM and made 603 horsepower, numbers that sounded insane in 2004. Even Porsche's own test driver, the legendary Walter Röhrl, said, "The Carrera GT was the first car in my life that I drive, and I feel scared." Porsche even used exotic materials like titanium connecting rods, forged pistons, and a carbon fiber clutch so tiny and temperamental that stalling it at a stoplight became a rite of passage for new owners. And that clutch wasn't even the scariest part. The Carrera GT had no traction control, no stability assist, nothing to save you when things went wrong. Honestly, Porsche basically gave you a carbon fiber monocoque, race-derived suspension, and a naturally aspirated V10 from hell, and then said, good luck. But the truth is, when you did get it right, nothing else compared. 0 to 60 came in 3.5 seconds. Top speed cleared 205 miles per hour. Porsche only built around 1,270 of them between 2004 and 2007, and at the time, some collectors hesitated to pay that steep $440,000 price tag. Fast forward to today, and clean examples are worth $2 million or more. The irony? The car everyone was once scared of has become one of the most sought-after Porsches ever made. Number 7. Lexus LFA. Imagine spending 10 years, hundreds of millions of dollars, and building an entirely new factory, just to make 500 cars you knew would lose money. Sounds insane, right? That's exactly what Lexus did with the LFA, a supercar so over-engineered it feels less like a vehicle and more like Toyota's billion-dollar science experiment. Strangely enough, when they first showed it as a concept in 2005, they had no real plan to build it. But people went wild for it, and Lexus basically got peer-pressured into production. And when it finally arrived in 2009, it wasn't just a fancy Lexus with a big engine. It was a full-blown engineering science project on wheels. For starters, Lexus actually scrapped 6 years of work on an aluminum chassis. Yes, 6 years, because they decided it wasn't good enough. Instead, they built a carbon fiber tub from scratch, just to shave weight and squeeze out a better power-to-weight ratio. That move alone set the tone. This car wasn't about cost efficiency. It was about chasing perfection through over-engineering. And then there's the engine, because you simply can't talk about the LFA without it. Under the hood sat a 4.8-liter V10, built with help from Yamaha, who not only tuned it for performance, but also crafted the sound. Yes, we're talking about the sound that is famously described as the roar of an angel, which honestly might be the most accurate way to put it. This V10 pumped out 553 horsepower, screamed all the way up to 9,000 RPM. That was so fast, an analog tach needle couldn't even keep up, which is why the LFA had one of the first digital rev counters in any supercar. The numbers backed it up too. 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds, a top speed north of 202 miles per hour, and an engine that was somehow the size of a V8 but lighter than Toyota's own Camry V6. Lexus only built 500 of these cars between 2010 and 2012. But here's the kicker. For all its brilliance, Lexus couldn't sell them for about $400,000 apiece. Today, though, everyone finally gets it. Prices have skyrocketed, with clean examples now fetching anywhere between $800,000 and $1.5 million. Number 6. Mercedes-Benz SL65 AMG and Black Series. Did you know Mercedes once built a convertible so powerful it could embarrass most supercars? Meet the SL65 AMG. In 2009, Mercedes already had the SL63 AMG with a 6.2-liter V8, which many called perfect, but apparently some customers thought, perfect is boring, make it insane. So Mercedes went all out. They stuffed a 6.0-liter twin-turbo V12 under the hood, producing 612 horsepower and an insane amount of 738 pound-feet of torque. That's enough to hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 4 seconds, all while wrapped in a luxurious convertible. Think of it like a rocket disguised as a limo. But don't mistake this for some tiny supercar. The SL65 weighs nearly 5,000 pounds, yet thanks to active body control, it handles like a sports car on rails. Corners, flat as a pancake. Braking, no nosedive. Launching, no squatting. Basically, it's physics-defying engineering wrapped in a ridiculously comfortable convertible. But then came the Black Series, and Mercedes decided to push the over-engineering envelope even further. This was no longer just a powerful convertible, it was a road-legal supercar with a V12 heart attack. The Black Series engine was tuned to 670 horsepower, keeping the same monstrous torque, but paired with hundreds of pounds of carbon fiber weight savings. Hood, fenders, and even interior panels were swapped out for lightweight materials, making the car far sharper and more agile. You could say that the SL65 AMG Black Series is what happens when Mercedes decides the regular V12 isn't scary enough. It's absurdly fast, shockingly precise for its size, and unapologetically over-engineered. Coming up next, we've got a car that proves when America decides to over-engineer something, it doesn't hold back. Number 5. Cadillac XLR-V. You know how every high school has that one kid who tries way too hard to fit in with the cool crowd? That was the Cadillac XLR-V in the 2000s. Many call it the most underrated American sports car of the decade, and honestly, they're right. Think of it this way. Cadillac saw the Mercedes SL65 AMG achieve a lot of well-deserved media hype and said, wait, why should Germany have all the fun? We're Cadillac, we can do this too. And instead of just slapping a big engine in a luxury cruiser, they went all in with over-engineering. At the heart of the XLR-V was a 4.4-liter supercharged Northstar V8, hand-built to exacting standards at GM's Performance Build Center in Michigan. And when we say hand-built, we mean one technician built each engine from start to finish, just like how Ferrari or Aston Martin did things. The result? 443 horsepower and 414 pound-feet of torque, enough to launch it from 0 to 60 in just 4.7 seconds. But the XLR-V wasn't just about power. Cadillac wanted this car to handle like a European Grand Tourer, so they got clever with the engineering. The transmission was mounted in the rear for better weight distribution, and the suspension wasn't some old-school setup either. It used a magnetohelical shock absorber system known as magnetic ride control. That means the suspension fluid literally changes stiffness when hit with a magnetic charge. Translation: 1 second it's soft and cushy for cruising, the next it's firm and sharp for cornering. So why don't we talk about it today? Simple. Price tag. Back in 2006, the XLR-V cost nearly $100,000. And let's be honest, if you had 6 figures to blow on a roadster, you were walking into a Porsche or Mercedes dealership, not a Cadillac one. The car was brilliant, but it was fighting a battle it was never going to win. Number 4. Volkswagen Phaeton. Did you know the Volkswagen Phaeton was born out of pure revenge? In the early 2000s, VW CEO Ferdinand Piëch was not happy. BMW and Mercedes had released the 3 Series Compact in the A-Class, trying to muscle in on Volkswagen's territory. Piëch didn't just want to compete, he wanted to build a car so over-engineered that it would embarrass them all. And boy, did he deliver. The Phaeton was a luxury sedan like no other. Under the hood, you could get engines ranging from a smooth V6 to a mind-blowing 6.0-liter W12, producing over 450 horsepower. That's supercar-level power in a car that looked like your dad's Passat, except it wasn't your dad's Passat. Volkswagen went absolutely nuts with the engineering. The chassis was made from a mix of aluminum and steel, welded, bolted, and reinforced in ways that could survive decades of abuse. The air suspension could raise or lower the car at the push of a button, making it float like a cloud or hug the road like a sports car. The four-wheel drive system intelligently sent power to the wheels that needed it most. Every component was obsessively engineered, so much so that the car felt alive, like it knew how to out-handle every BMW and Mercedes on the road. Inside, the Phaeton was mind-blowingly luxurious. Leather, wood, perfect fit and finish. Every button and panel screamed precision. But the real magic wasn't just in the looks, it was in the engineering. Volkswagen wanted a car that could last decades without breaking a sweat, something even Bentley and Rolls-Royce would nod at. Ironically, despite all this genius, the Phaeton barely sold. Over its 15-year production run from 2002 to 2016, a total of 84,253 Volkswagen Phaetons were purchased. People looked at its price tag, $60,000 to $100,000, depending on the trim level, and said, "Why spend Bentley money on a Volkswagen?" Today, the Phaeton is legendary among car lovers as one of the most over-engineered and criminally underappreciated vehicles of the 2000s. Before we reveal the final three, don't forget to hit the like button and comment below which over-engineered car from the 2000s you love the most. Number 3. Nissan R34 Skyline GTR. Did you know the Nissan R34 Skyline GTR is often called Godzilla Returns? That's because this car wasn't just fast, it was a full-blown engineering monster coming back to reclaim the streets and tracks. By the early 2000s, the R34 wasn't just a sports car, it was a rolling engineering masterpiece built by people who refused to believe in limits. Under the hood, the GTR packed the famous 2.6-liter RB26 Det inline-6, twin-turbocharged and officially rated at 280 horsepower in stock form. But don't let that number mislead you. This engine was actually capable of far more thanks to its forged internals, beefed-up rods, and high-strength cooling system. In other words, it wasn't just fast, it was bulletproof fast. Boost it a little, and you could easily hit 400-plus horsepower without worrying about breaking anything. But here's where Nissan really went overboard, in a good way. The R34 came with the Atisa ETS Pro all-wheel drive system, a complex computer-controlled setup that could shift torque to whichever wheels needed it most in milliseconds. Combine that with the active limited slip differential, and the car could corner like it had eyes on the tires themselves. Driving it felt like holding a lightning bolt in your hands. You didn't just control the car, you communicated with it. Step inside this beast's belly, and the over-engineering doesn't stop. The R34 featured a multi-function display that gave real-time data on turbo boost, oil pressure, and even lateral G-forces. It was like a cockpit from a spaceship, but for humans lucky enough to push it to its limits. Even the body and suspension were obsessively designed. Every panel, arm, and control point was tuned for rigidity, weight distribution, and precision, giving the R34 the uncanny ability to feel both planted and nimble. Every corner, every throttle input, every downshift, it all worked in perfect harmony. All of this proves that sometimes engineers' extreme pursuits end up creating legendary beasts on the road. Number 2. Bugatti Veyron. Here's something insane you probably didn't know. The Bugatti Veyron cost $5 million to build, but Bugatti sold it for just $1 million. And they weren't doing it for charity. They were doing it to prove a point. Let's see how far we can push physics before it pushes back. And against all odds, they succeeded. But how? Well, the Veyron in 2005 was a technological Everest. To make its 4-turbocharged W16 engine work, Bugatti had to invent new components from scratch. 10 radiators, space-grade materials, cooling systems, and advanced aerodynamics were all needed just to keep it together at extreme speeds. They even borrowed airplane technology for countless components because nothing on the road had ever been asked to handle the extreme output. Every nut, bolt, and turbo was meticulously designed by hand. This wasn't just a luxury car. It was a moving lesson in engineering obsession, and the engine, freakishly powerful. The Veyron's 8.0-liter W16 pumped out 987 horsepower and 922 pound-feet of torque. Back then, most journalists thought it was a joke. They thought it was impossible. But Bugatti wasn't messing around. In the end, the Veyron became the first production car to break the 248 miles per hour mark in 2005. Number 1. Ford GT. Did you know the Ford GT went from concept to production in just 15 months? That's faster than most people can even build a house. And yet Ford somehow managed to turn a racing legend into a street-legal supercar. Or you could say an icon of American automotive engineering. In fact, the GT was born to honor the original GT40 that crushed Ferrari at Le Mans in 1966. Almost 40 years later, Ford decided it was time for a reminder. They could still build a car that dominates racetracks and turns heads on the street. The result? A mid-engine carbon fiber supercar packing a supercharged 5.4-liter V8, producing 550 horsepower and 500 pound-feet of torque. It could rocket from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 3.3 seconds and hit a top speed of 205 miles per hour. But the real genius was in the details. The carbon fiber monocoque chassis made the car incredibly stiff and lightweight. The pushrod suspension, borrowed from Le Mans prototypes, used inboard shocks to deliver cornering stability that's terrifyingly good. Every titanium bolt, every aluminum subframe, every aerodynamic tweak was obsessively tested to squeeze out performance, often overkill. But in a supercar, overkill is exactly what you want. Even the body was over-engineered. Every curve, every vent, every rear diffuser had a purpose. Wind tunnel tested to perfection, it funneled air with surgical precision, reducing drag and increasing downforce so the GT could stick to the road at speeds that made lesser supercars feel like they were floating. What's fascinating is that Ford tried 7 times to capitalize on the success of the original GT40, but it took 37 years of tinkering, engineering, and trial and error before they finally got it right. The 7th time was the charm, and the Ford GT proved it in spectacular fashion. We hope you enjoyed this video. Here's another one you won't want to miss. As always, thanks for watching.